Good morning and welcome. Thank you for joining us here at First Unitarian Church of Toledo and our live broadcast on YouTube. We miss seeing you all in the sanctuary. We trust you're all doing well and taking care. There's no true announcements this week, but reminder to stay up to date with the happenings of our church remotely. Please be sure you're subscribed to our church FYI via email. You can also take a minute and say hi in the comments. Make sure we know you're here this Sunday.
And I just want to note that there are typically these days 9 of us here at church to put the Sunday service together. First, we want to thank Rich Miller, who is kind of an all-around help, and he's the one who remembers to water the plants while we're closed during the pandemic. So Rich gets extra points for that. We have our production crew, which right now is Arun Nataraja, Eric Sills, Tom Sheehan, and Robin Stone. And there are the 4 of us who you see on camera: Bonnie Rowe, Mickey Imch, Soroya King, and myself. I'm the senior minister, T.K. Barger. Welcome all. Our opening words are by Sharon Wiley, titled, "You Are Never Alone." It is okay to be tired of change. It is okay to be tired of everything different. Okay to feel weary of resiliency and wholeness and learning and growth, and okay to yearn simply for rest. It's okay to be grouchy and unsatisfied, and all the ordinary human ways of being that we are. Let this morning be a reminder that you are loved. Let our time together soothe what is restless in you. May you be comforted in knowing that whatever you are feeling today and other days, you are not alone. You are never alone. Come, let us be together.
For our chalice lighting today, I'll read Grounding in Our Faith by Alice Anasheka Nashman. She says, in a time of uncertainty when everything around us is changing constantly, each day new developments, rising numbers, changing guidelines, when the world we live in suddenly seems upside down and topsy-turvy, we light our chalice to remind ourselves of our grounding in our faith. We remember that the flaming chalice came into being as a beacon of hope during World War II, a secret symbol that offered help. In the midst of it all, we wrap ourselves in the warm light of a familiar flame, a reminder of the strength that emerges when we come together in community.
And now please join me in reciting our covenant. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And we have a congregational sing. You in your home, part of the congregation, you're welcome to sing as you will, or to listen. Either way is good. We're going to have number 110, Come Children of Tomorrow. And we will have lyrics on the screen.
Come, children of tomorrow, come, new glory dawns on the world. The warring banners must be furled, the earth become our common home. From plain and field and town there sound the stirring
Our story today is called Gratitude in Real Time by Robin Young and Evie Levine, and it's been adapted. It's about a COVID-19 survivor who thanks 116 doctors and nurses who saved his life. Jeff Gerson was admitted to NYU Langone Tisch Hospital in mid-March with a high fever and a cough. The next day, doctors put him on a ventilator. When he woke up from his treatment, he had no memory of being intubated. He wanted to thank the more than 116 hospital workers who attended to him when he was sick with COVID-19. But that proved to be a monumental task. Doctors and nurses' names and contact information weren't readily available to him. I felt the need to say thank you for the heroic treatment, and yet the circumstances were denying me that, Gerson says. Every morning I would cry in gratitude and wonder, why did I survive? And so part of my emotional recovery was to say, thank you. To track down the people who saved his life, Gerson began with the MyChart app, which displayed the names of the doctors who ordered the more than 750 blood tests, electrocardiograms, and x-rays he underwent. The app was a saving grace, he says. He also looked to his insurance company's explanation of benefits, which provided the first initials and last names of all the doctors who billed for his treatment. But Gerson wanted to thank each and every person who had been involved in his care. So he wrote a long letter. In the letter, he details the lengths he went to identify the doctors and nurses who saved his life. He describes the full and complete recovery he has made from COVID-19 and thanks them for his efforts. There was one doctor Gerson couldn't reach, Dr. Sidney Mail, who saw patients until he tested positive for COVID-19 and died of the virus 61 days later, as Katie Couric recounts. He treated me the first day I was in the hospital on March 20th, Gerson says. I read in the Couric piece how he was treating patients right up until the day he checked himself in on March 20th. So it occurred to me that I was certainly one of the last patients that he saw, if not the last. And it underscored for me that he was working right up until the last minute. Since sending the letter to 116 recipients, Gerson has heard back from doctors and nurses who were overjoyed to learn of his recovery and know that they made such a difference. Gerson has made a full and complete recovery, and he's not suffering from any lingering effects of COVID-19. Since his discharge in Central Park for more than 850 miles, he is able to continue raising his son. Gerson never expected his letter to earn him attention on the cover of the New York Daily News. It did. My objective simply was to say thank you. And the coming, as it did during Thanksgiving, and the number of cases that spiked. I hope at the very least it reminds everybody that there are still heroes out there, still on the front lines, still fighting to get the pandemic under control, he says. They often go without appreciation. And the point of my letter was to give them the recognition that they are due.
Our anthem today is a bit of a change from the FYI. Given the news cycle and everything going on, I think we could use an uplifting anthem. I Know I Can. It's in your green hymnal if you'd like to sing along. Though days be dark with storms and burdens weigh my heart, though troubles wait at every turn, I know
Please join me for a time of meditation, contemplation, and prayer. I bring you a COVID-19 grief and gratitude ritual by Kathy Ryan Starr. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic is real for all of us, whether we are touched by it directly or indirectly. Some of us know people who have the virus, and its impact is getting closer as we learned of second cousins and friends of friends who have died of COVID-19. And now it's here among us with members of our congregation diagnosed, and we're relieved, surviving. But there have also been close family members who died from complications of COVID-19. This morning, we share a ritual to recognize deaths due to COVID-19, to note the particular pain of grieving in isolation, as well as to lift up gratitude for all those on the front lines: healthcare workers, grocery store workers, janitors, domestic workers. I'm going to stand and light a candle. You may wish to find your own candle to light where you are. Will you join me now in lighting a candle of grief and gratitude, your own, or just make your own image of a candle? And I invite you to join me in saying, "We light this candle," and then I will say a few words and invite you to speak the names on your heart. We light this candle in honor of all those working on the front lines in hospitals, nursing homes, grocery stores, and gas stations. I invite you now to name those who you know on the front lines. We light this candle to send our love to those dying in isolation, especially those who we know and those who are loved by those we know. I invite you now to name those you know of who have died of the COVID-19 virus. We light this candle to send our love to all those grieving deaths of all causes. I invite you now to name those who you know of who are grieving. We light this candle in recognition of the enormity of this pandemic's impact on each of us, on those we love, on everyone, especially those already challenged by poverty, racism, transphobia, ableism, xenophobia, and more. We light this candle in grief, in honor, in recognition, and most of all, in love. Let us observe 1 minute of silence.
Rose, holy rose, queen set free, spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Our reading today is by President-elect Joe Biden on the COVID-19 pandemic, December 20th, 2020. We need to be honest. The next few weeks and months are going to be very tough. A very tough period for our nation, maybe the toughest during this entire pandemic. I know it's hard to hear, but it's the truth.
For probably all of us old enough to have had ninth grade civics class, we had to take current event quizzes, didn't we? I also faced that in journalism school, then had to give current events quizzes when I taught journalism. Well, though the original thought for this service was for us to catch up on COVID news and to speculate on how this congregation might proceed, this turned out to be a week of major current events. So to prepare you for any tests, I'm going to ramble on about the coronavirus pandemic, the certification of the Electoral College vote, and the riot in the Capitol, and the current and elected presidents. I'll just talk. I'm not giving a pop quiz. On Friday, 300,594 cases of COVID-19 were reported for the day in the US. The first time the one-day number was above 300,000. On Thursday, there were 4,085 coronavirus deaths. The first time the one-day number was above 4,000. This week, hospitalizations also reached their highest number so far. No, the pandemic is not over. We're not seeing waves cresting. And though vaccination has begun, we must continue to be diligent in protecting ourselves and our loved ones from the disease. Wear a mask and wash your hands still. Please get vaccinated as soon as you're eligible and can find where to have a dose administered. It doesn't matter if it's the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccine. Both have been approved and other ones are on the way. Have confidence, and when you're vaccinated, you might still practice precautions to help the rest of us as we wait our turn. I don't think your first dose is a time to abandon your mask. Early this morning, I checked the Johns Hopkins University Coronavirus Resource Center, as it's a reliable resource for counting data. For number gathering, I also checked the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Lucas County Health Department. There have been 22,138,418 confirmed cases in the US total. The Saturday one-day number yesterday, 273,854 just on one day. We have 770,977 cases in Ohio total. The Saturday one-day number 8,374. There are 28,189 cases in Lucas County total. The latest one-day number, 249. And there are 89,711,341 cases confirmed in the world. We have 372,522 deaths in the U.S. total. And the Saturday one-day number is 3,735. It's possible that under the current presidency, 400,000 will have died by the inauguration day for Joe Biden as president. There are 9,599 deaths in Ohio total, the Saturday one-day number being 55, and 554 deaths in Lucas County total, with no deaths reported yesterday. There have been 1,928,023 deaths in the world so far. To today, in the U.S., more than 7,059,000 doses of vaccine have been administered, and more than 161,000 people have completed the two-dose vaccinations. On our Facebook page, and you can also get the information from the Lucas County Health Department, there is a pre-registration form to fill out that helps officials determine how many vaccine doses will be needed for the next phase. The stage that includes everyone over age 65 and people with selected medical conditions. Please complete and submit that to help us have enough to go around. If you're not in Lucas County, as we have congregants from Wood County and from Michigan and from other places, check with your health department. Be active about getting the coronavirus better under control. And remember that being as isolated as you can be is one of the best ways to prevent catching it. Now let me share some thoughts about how our congregation will progress through the disease and back into gathering. Our Toledo Unitarians COVID-19 task force will meet again soon as we've been considering future steps. For now, the church remains tightly shut. We know that some of our members have had COVID-19 and recovered, and we haven't experienced deaths, but our loved ones certainly have. I owe a few check-in phone calls, I know. You're not forgotten. I have pondered whether Easter Sunday would be our first back in person, or if we will wait longer. It will not be sooner. Our having an open to the public service depends on how available the virus has been and how many of our members completed their vaccinations. So please report to us as you're vaccinated. We haven't considered what some churches are doing, which is only permitting a limited number of people to attend in live stream services in person, as we don't know a fair way to say who can come and how to line up the process. I have looked at an FM transmitter so we could meet outdoors in the spring, but that possibility is still being considered and the purchase not yet approved. When we can, we'll meet again. And I've already called on you to be active in our return. I'm slowly developing my own plans for how we as a congregation might reinvigorate the congregation and membership. And I hope you'll bring ideas and we'll get recommitted to being the main body of liberal religion in Northwest Ohio. For now, please keep seeing us on YouTube. Be well, my friends. Next topic, capital matters. Who would have thought that this year and every 4 years ceremonial procedure, having great formality and mostly symbolic, would have been the object of insurrection? There was destruction and death, and we'll be reading about the consequences to the people who took part. Though, going back to the school theme from current events, some of it did look like a senior prank gone bad. Let's steal the lectern. Let's sit in the principal's seat. Let's see if everything stops while they clean up. And then I was caught up in the crowd and would never do anything that bad on my own. If I say I won't do it again, can I please go home? People were following the current president's lead, doing everything they can not to have the people's will instituted, as decided in free and fair elections. The people involved are being located, arrested, and charged. But it's shameful that this is all happening afterward. We're seeing much reaction from past Capitol protesters with civil rights agendas who are speaking of their peaceful demonstrations being met with police strength and arrests on the scene, whereas this demonstration of largely white male privilege ran amok, seemingly with government complicity. And we're seeing obvious and blatant differences between Black Lives Matter demonstrations and these situated in white supremacy. This denying the democratic process and the delusions of Donald Trump have resulted in calls for the president to resign or to have his vice president and cabinet use the procedure from the 25th Amendment to remove him from office, or for him to be impeached again, this time convicted and barred from seeking elective office ever again. And that gets us to the danger that the current holder of the nation's highest office still poses with only 10 days remaining in his term. He has the power to pardon all those involved in the insurrection whose names are known. But he might be more focused on pardoning his children and his political and business associates and giving medals to the celebrities who might have said nice things about him. The one thing about all this chaos is that maybe it will distract him enough that he won't concentrate to follow through on much of he might be speculated to do. We have been assured that there are some safeguards about his possessing the capability to use nuclear weapons, but we still fret that that's not enough for our comfort. Before the impeachment at the beginning of 2020, I had called from this church's pulpit for Donald Trump to be removed from office, a stand based on morals, not on party politics. I'll be happy if we have a safe transition with Trump still president until noon on January 20th. But I think there is need both for punitive and symbolic reasons for the impeachment to be completed with conviction after he is out of office. I know that it interferes with the focus of a new presidential administration, but I see some importance to using this to repudiate the practices that did not have the interests of we, the people, at their core. At the 2020 General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association, the board of the UUA called for his removal. I think based on that board action, or possibly from a presidential or leadership team decision at the UUA, a press release came from the Public Relations Office at the Unitarian Universalist Association on Friday with the heading, Unitarian Universalists denounce complicity with extremists, call for courageous action by national leaders. I'll read you that press release. The Unitarian Universalist Association joins leaders across the country in calling for the immediate removal of Donald Trump as U.S. President. We call on the Vice President and every cabinet member to invoke the 25th Amendment and that Congress pursue articles of impeachment for the protection, safety, and stability of our country. President Trump has violated his oath to defend the Constitution, engaged in illegal and seditious acts, undermined a peaceful transition of power, and put the country, its leaders, and people in danger. As a religious institution, we live faithfully our role as a part of the critical fabric of our country's moral conscience. And as Unitarian Universalists, we hold democracy as a central principle for our faith. We are compelled by the events of this week to call these actions what they were: attempts by insurrection to overthrow our duly elected government. This is a time for true accountability and courageous action in pursuit of a more just, equitable, multiracial, and pluralistic democracy. President Trump and other national leaders, including members of Congress, must be held accountable for inciting insurrectionist violence by spreading lies and false claims of election fraud and attempting to usurp the will of the American people. We condemn those treasonous attempts to subvert our democracy and prevent certification of the Electoral College vote. The inevitable result was the unlawful storming of the U.S. Capitol, the endangerment of congressional leaders, staff, law enforcement, and multiple deaths. We call on every member of Congress to act on their sworn constitutional allegiance and tell the American people the truth, that the presidential election represented a free and fair election. Despite Donald Trump's attempts to dress up false claims of fraud in a spurious legal cloak, the 2020 election was the largest and most transparent election in history. The outcome of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as the next president and vice president of the United States represents the will of the American people. The events witnessed at the Capitol are the predictable outcome of the racism and white supremacy that has been emboldened and given license by the president throughout his term and without consequences. We call on our government to take this attack on our democracy seriously. White supremacist violence is the greatest threat to public safety and our democracy. From the daily news to the warnings of federal intelligence experts, we know that the greatest ongoing domestic threats are from these extremists. The president and his enablers sought to undermine the 2020 election and focused their efforts to delegitimize and throw out votes of Black, Indigenous, and Latinx people across the country, especially in contested states. These efforts were a targeted attack rooted in our country's long practice of voter suppression and denying citizenship rights to people of color. An attack on voting rights and citizenship rights for any citizen in an attack is an attack on the rights of every citizen. Black movement leaders have been warning for years that this is the frightening impact of white supremacy culture, which was evident in our founding documents and throughout our country's history. It was on clear display in the stark contrast of law enforcement's minimal response to the white supremacist insurrectionists that breached the Capitol. Protests by the movement for Black Lives, by comparison, were met with tanks, tear gas, and bullets. From Charlottesville to Kenosha, Minneapolis to Michigan, we have seen this pattern repeated. The disparity of police treatment is yet another example of the fundamental need to divest from a punitive and racist system of policing, and the need to invest instead in the health and well-being of our communities and civic life. The response to this attempted coup should not be more policing. The failure is not a lack of policing, but the pattern of complicity with these dangerous extremists. We must uphold our democratic values and lawful civic engagement, even at the most difficult of times. It is the measure of our national character. We must use this moment as an opportunity for profound reflection and awakening, not just in a momentary outcry, but as a basis for significant and lasting change. Our Unitarian Universalist tradition is rooted in the values of human dignity, justice, compassion, and democratic principles. We will remain vigilant in our commitment to protecting our democracy and the integrity of its principles and the rights of all its people. We Unitarian Universalists support the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. As our fifth principle states, after the resistance of a losing incumbent and the thoughts of revolution of many of his followers to remold the United States into an authoritarian regime, it is time for Unitarian Universalists to support democracy. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will be inaugurated as president and vice president on January 20th. The House and the Senate will both have Democratic leadership. It won't be easy with only a narrow Democratic majority in the House and currently, or at Inauguration Day, a 50-50 split in the Senate. But that does lay the ground for restoration of an America we know and implementation of policies for the nation we might envision. Let's do what we can to support that, because this is one of the ties between our liberal religion and left-leaning politics. Their policies help us better to build beloved community, to have individual rights, and to live free. I won't test you on this, but I will ask you to remember it. So be it.
As we come toward time of I invite you to look in the YouTube description for resources if you're so moved and able to contribute online at uutoledo.org or at our Glendale address, 3205 Glendale Avenue. First Unitarian's mission is to foster spiritual growth and compassionate action. Our vision is a vibrant spiritual community that achieves growth, visibility, and relevance.
Coming soon to First Unitarian Church of Toledo. Next week's 10 a.m. Spiritual Adventures Forum is Widening the Circle, led by Sandra Kozik-Sills. Then the 11 a.m. service here on the Toledo Unitarians YouTube channel is Safe and Legal, which will be discussion not just of Roe versus Wade anniversary and choice regarding abortion, but safe and legal, the condition of our country, safe and legal, the elections that did result in Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to be inaugurated on January 20th. So in a way, it will also be an inauguration sermon, but the title, Safe and Legal.
Please join us immediately after service today for our social hour. Special invitation, as always, to visitors. That Zoom passcode and meeting code is also in the description on the YouTube box. You can go ahead and click that, copy, paste, and we'll see you there.
Our closing words, A Prayer for These Times by Kenneth P. Longer. Let me find peace within so that I may be calm throughout. Let me find silence within so that I may find compassion throughout. Let me be reminded that some things are worth waiting for. Let me be reminded that the journey is more important than reaching the destination. Let me see that the non-doing is as much a part of life as the doing. Let me be reminded that it is in these moments of holding on that I can find quietude and renewal. It is within these times of inaction that I can find rest. It is in these times of emptiness that I can become full.
And we're sending the flame today with a reading called Hope Rises by John A. Burns and Rebecca Parker. Hope rises. It rises from the heart of life here and now, beating with joy and sorrow. Hope longs. It longs for good to be affirmed, for justice and love to prevail, for suffering to be alleviated, and for life to flourish in peace. Hope remembers. It remembers the dreams of those who have gone before and reaches for connection with them across the boundary of death. Hope acts. It acts to bless, to protest, and to repair.